So, Assalamualaikum and greetings to everyone. So, in this video, we will continue on Lab 3B, the observer design patterns under the behavioral. Okay, so last time we have cover on the factor methods on the creational design pattern. So now we focus on the observer behavioral design pattern. Okay, so what is the intent of this design pattern? First is to define a one-to-many dependency between objects so that when one object change state, all its dependents are notified and updated automatically. So it means that if we have one class and it has a few other classes dependent on the changes of that the state of that class, you don't need to call upon every each class that dependency to update if that class has been updated. Okay, so the applicability when an abstraction has two aspects, one dependent on the other. Okay, and when a change to one object requires changing others, and you don't know how many objects need to be changed, because when times goes by, the system is getting complex. There's too many dependent classes among each classes. And then when an object should notify other objects without making assumptions about who these objects are. So the consequences, there are of course the good and bad in observer patterns. For the consequence of good consequences, it actually applies the modularity design principle. Subject and observers may vary independently. Okay, they do not have to be an instance of or implements type of relationships. And then extensibility. Okay, you can add more and more other classes that dependent to the specific class. Okay, and with no hassle. And then customizability. Okay, different observer provide different views of the object. For example, perhaps the observer in the first class show in a form of HTML and then the other one in form of XML. So it depends. It doesn't really matter how does it update, but the only matters the only updates, but how does it should be represented, the data or the state of or any type of message being updated to that specific class that dependent to the subject will is up to the class of the observer. Okay, but the bad consequence of observer, because it's automatically update all the dependent class, it is sometimes unexpected updates. So observer do not know about each other. Okay, because it doesn't need to know the observer. Okay, the subject does not need to know which of the observer, which class will be the observer of that subject. And then update overhead might need hints. Okay, next, implementations of observer. So it follows the subject observer mapping. Okay, dangling references, avoiding observer specific updates protocols, the push and pull models. Okay, because like for example based on the exercise the example that I provided later on, it shows that the if you want to know something's updated, you will actually request it. That's what we call as the pull. Okay, but then this is much more on the push. When something's updated, you will directly update others also automatically, so it's considered as a push models. And registering modifications of interest explicitly. Okay, so this is the design of observer patterns. If you can see here, we have our observer. Of course, we have the interface to interact with any of the subject of the server. So the subject is that the state is the class or the specific class to where the state has to be changes, and it needs to notify updating the observer. Okay, and so the subject will only update every of the observer based on it notifies calls of the subject. All right. So let's see the participants of each for the observer patterns. First is subject. Okay, the class whose instance independently change their state and notify the observer. And then of course we have the observer or interface observer. An interface for observers specifying how they should be updated. Okay, and then observer, a class that provides an update method to enable its instance state to stay consistent with the subjects. Alright, and then we have the update operations, which is to form the interface between the subject and the observer and notify the event mechanism for calling an update operation on all observer. Okay, so the example is actually on this video YouTube that I will share with that inside this video, and also I will share inside the e-learning. Okay, so you may refer on this YouTube to understand more of the concept of these observer patterns written in a Java programming language. So that's it for the observer patterns, and thank you so much. Assalamualaikum and have a good day.